I know all the folks round these arts and parts. Can't say I know you. Leastways, not yet. But I dare say I know what you'll be wanting. Some of the crack, maybe. A wee yarn with your sup, is it? No harm in that. Come on over. Warm yourself, I'll warn you, though. If it's the old Begorra and Blarney shenanigans you're after, you'll not hear them from me. Well, as such, like, pleases you, you sit on. I'll fill your ears. And see what story is meant for you on this dark old night.
I'm Chris.
I'm Spence.
And this is the Irish Gothic Podcast.
How you doing, Spence?
I'm good, Chris. How have you been, sir?
I've been doing all right. As we record, it is the first week of December.
Yes, I must start with a confession, Chris. At the end of our last episode, I said I would climb Slemish, the mountain that looks a wee bit like the mountain from Close Encounters.
How are your feet?
Well, in my defence, Christopher, the weather's been very, very bad. We've had storms with actual names attached to them. So I chickened out.
Was that storm called Lazy Bugger?
Storm Lazy Bugger hit. So I didn't get the Slemish onto that old Close Encounters mountain, but I definitely will. It's on the New Year's resolution list, I promise.
Speaking of Close Encounters, did you see in the news this week that they were expecting an alien invasion?
It didn't. Who's they? What do you mean?
Well, generally some guy said he predicted that there was going to be an alien invasion, but of course it might be next week now because it didn't come this week. But oddly enough, there was a UFO spotted at Manchester Airport.
Right.
It was spotted by everybody. This sort of metal ball came down from on high and just hovered about 6 or 7 foot off the runway.
Goodness, I've got to Google that. I didn't hear a peep about that.
Now, they don't call them UFOs anymore, Spence.
Oh, why not?
The Americans have had hearings in Congress and they've decided to call them UAPs. They are unidentified aerial phenomena.
Ah, yeah.
Instead of UFOs, because apparently the term UFOs comes with a lot of connotations, comes with a lot of baggage.
Oh, okay.
So they thought they'd put that out the window. In one of these Congress meetings, they actually said that there was UFOs. And they're not from above, they're from below. So apparently in some of the deepest trenches in the sea, that's where they are.
Oh.
Now, I haven't seen any. The fact that the government investigation team can announce that there is UFOs and nobody really cares shows the way the world is right now.
It's phenomenal. In the sea, you say, yeah?
In the sea. Apparently they know where they are.
You think now, man, with all the technology, it's got to be the age where we'll know. Do you know what I mean, man? Like the way we can capture so much footage and infrared and deep sea scanners, I don't know.
See, you'd think so. But every time I see a picture that somebody's taken from an iPhone, it's bloody blurry.
Yeah. So it's a part of the tech.
I mean, there was a thing earlier this week where they say they're drones, but apparently like 10, 15, 20 lights were over American bases in the UK. One of the American bases, and I can't remember the name of it, it was working with nuclear weapons at that point. It was deploying nuclear weapons to RAF Larkin Heath. Okay. And they were getting them off the plane when all these lights turned on.
No way. And they're not thinking spies, foreign actors.
Well, you see, they are thinking that they could be drones and all that, but to be honest, I think that the aliens could land on the White House lawn and no one would care, or they wouldn't believe it. But talking about things being under the sea, let's just say it's the Kelpie, Spence.
The Kelpie. Nicely done there, Chris. Nicely done. I thought your ramblings were just ramblings. That's beautiful. So yeah, the Kelpie, a quick overview. very, very big deal in Irish and Scottish folklore as well, actually, but it's known as a fierce, shape-shifting water sprite, water demon, I guess, and it's known to hunt streams and lakes, preying on the unsuspecting, the unwary. They say it has a kind of devious, dangerous nature, so it was often accused and blamed of even wee small misdemeanors like breaking and busting up mill wheels, water wheels, or causing streams to swell and banks to burst and cattle to not birth or horses not to foal and things like that, all the way up to actually committing really quite ghastly murders.
I mean, I get this shape-shifting entity. Well, there's a number of forms it takes. I mean, a magnificent, beautiful white horse, and I think it was one of the Harry Potter films, or maybe the spin-offs, that he actually had a Kelpie in his cellar, and he rode this Kelpie around. It wasn't Harry Potter.
Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, sorry.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. That was our producer coming in there.
That was not the voice of the Mr. Ons.
That was the voice of God.
Keeping us right.
But certainly Fantastic Beasts and Where to Ride Them, where he had a Kelpie in that sort of TARDIS-like case that he could get into. A beautiful white horse. I think I read somewhere, Spence, where they are beautiful women as well.
Yep.
That can attract, or a beautiful man.
Yeah, occasionally women, so mostly I think a horse and a male form. And as you rightly say, in either of those forms, they would entice travellers or people by the watersides, to ride the horse or come closer to the man, and then they would dash into the water and drown them.
Usually, you find the main sign is that this horse is by a river or a lake, and it's actually a Kelpie, and its mane is soaking wet because obviously it's come out of the water. So you have to be on the lookout for a basically dripping wet horse, or a basically dripping wet woman, or a basically dripping wet man. So and the problem is these days that people do a lot of swimming. So,
Exactly.
You can't believe your own eyes.
Well, I did read something in the news actually this week about the water quality around the shores of some of the places in the north of Ireland.
Oh yeah, you wouldn't want to be swimming. You come out with two heads.
I'd rather take a chance with a Kelpie, but you mentioned there about how that spotting the Kelpie when it's in its horse form being that dripping wet mane, and the legend goes as well that when it does take the form of the handsome man, if you're careful enough and you're watchful enough, you'll notice that its feet are actually backward facing hooves.
Oh, like the devil.
Yeah, that plays into connections with the devil, and this man has got a particularly twisted and dark intent towards women and would lure them into the water, drown them and devour them in his underwater lair. But you're quite right, Chris, I think that's where the devil connotations start coming in.
Well, you see, the Kelpie is one of these strange creatures. It's got Celtic lore behind it, not just Irish lore. So there are versions of it in Scotland, and there are versions of it in different parts of the Celtic triangle of France, Cornwall, Wales. But it's definitely prevalent in Scotland, and one of the reasons it was mixed in with the devil was because of a work by Rabbie Burns, and it was called Address to the Devil, which was 1789, and I'm going to give it a go. So forgive
good.
Any sort of, if it's sounding, so I'm going to give it a go here. When throws devolve the Sawney horde, and float and jingle ice seaboard, then water kelpies hunt the ford, and night travellers are allured to their destruction.
Oh, that's wonderful.
I'm no Rob Inez, but
well, with Christmas just round the corner and Old Lang Syne, you could get a role there. Doing a bit of Rabbie Burns night speaking.
Yeah, that was my Ewan McGregor coming out there. My Obi-Wan.
Brilliant. That ties in. That poem is an address to the devil, and there the Kelpie is in it. And as you rightly say, man, like the Kelpie, it's popular here in Ireland. It's popular very much so in Scotland. It's probably the biggest in every respect. counterpart of the Kelpie, people would say that the Loch Ness Monster, Nessie, is actually a variant of a Kelpie. I know you've talked about the Medusa and the Gorgon in other episodes, Chris, so I think in Aberdeenshire, their version is a horse, but its mane is all serpents. It's fearsome stuff.
I find that when you talk about, I guess it's any lake in the world, you've got the American Great Lakes, and you've got obviously the lakes like Loch Ness and all the rest of it. They all have a monster or a folklore behind them, and you may agree with me in this, Spence. It's sort of a warning legend. You know, if Nessie's in Loch Ness, that means you don't want to go swimming in Loch Ness. So really, does that mean that these stories are to keep maybe children away from being drowned or people out of harm's way?
I think so, Chris. Again, it's familiar themes that we see in these episodes. I think it's very much about trying to warn children and the dangers of being near the water. It's also about trying probably to make sense of the environment, because we mentioned earlier there that the Kelpie can be blamed for rivers flooding and damming and water mills breaking. So again, it's making sense of things that are going on in nature, but I think absolutely it's a cautionary tale about staying away from the water, staying away from danger.
I think with a cautionary tale, Spence, there's an often told yarn about a group of children, isn't there?
Yeah, there's variations of this. If the detail changes slightly, but in essence, the story quite often told is there's usually a group of children, and they encounter the Kelpie, be it by a lake, by a stream, and the Kelpie appears in its horse form on some lonely waterside, and all the children are entranced, and they climb onto the creature's back. And there's usually one child who's a wee bit hesitant. I suppose in a modern horror film that would be the protagonist. You know, that would be the person whose sixth sense is tingling that this isn't quite right.
Let's not go into the house.
Yeah, the one who says don't split up. And it's usually a boy for whatever reason, but usually this little boy then does succumb and begins to pet the horse, at which point his hand gets stuck to the horse, which is the Kelpie's stick. That's how it works. And then they all get dragged in, stuck on this horse, into the water. But to come back to what you were mentioning there, Chris, about the connection to the devil and therefore the connection to Christianity, quite often how that wee boy survives, there's one of two ways. One version, he will have a penknife and he will literally sever his hands and fingers to release himself from the horse. And then the other version is because he has a Bible in his pocket and he touches the Bible. So again, you see those worlds clashing. So the boy makes it back to shore and the entrails of his friends are washed on the bloody shoreline.
That is some scene, that the entrails all see. But also, I did during this research look at it's like a form of exorcism that comes into this. Removing the Kelpie's bridle could be seen as a form of exorcism, and the Kelpie bridle was believed to possess the magical properties that were capable of transforming someone into a horse or a pony. Now, why you'd want to be transformed into a horse or a pony, I don't know, but those legends, especially in America, of the skinwalkers and people like that, it comes across that if you want to steal this bridle, you could turn yourself into a horse or a pony for a particular reason.
Yeah, or maybe turn your enemies into one, you know.
Well, that's true.
It gives people that power. It's those magical weapons and magical properties. For instance, they said it's silver bullets, which we would always associate with werewolves. Iron spears heated in red hot fires. These are all said to kill a Kelpie. And when you do kill a Kelpie, it's reduced to turf and a soft mass like jellyfish. So again, we're seeing that fear of the unknown and how those folks are trying to combat it in those days, be it via the belief that the Bible will save you, exorcism via removing the bridle, or by arming yourself with magic weapons. So yes, there's fear, yes, there's terror, yes, there's unknown, but there's always a solution, there's always a way to protect yourself against it in all these stories, which is I find so fascinating.
The Kelpie is one of our most, I would say, simple legends that we've covered because it pretty much has its rules. Don't go near the water. A bit like Jaws. Was the Kelpie used to scare unruly children away from dangerous waterways? Back in the late 70s, I think there was some videos with Donald Pleasance, shrouded in mist as the Grim Reaper.
That's right. They were those public broadcasting ads, Chris. They were terrifying. I remember, I don't know what age I was when I saw them. There were different versions of them, but they were creepy. And you're talking about Donald Pleasance as the Grim Reaper by the river. He was the spirit of the dark and lonely water. And I can't remember exactly the line, but if you can imagine, folks, that creepy Donald Pleasance voice, and he is this Grim Reaper figure standing in the mist by a riverside while these kids are playing, and he delivers these great lines to camera, and he's describing the children as foolish, they're unwary, they're overconfident. And when you put it like that, Chris, is that a modern outworking of what the Kelpie tale was? Stay away from the water?
I think it could be, when people are sitting around a fire and they're telling stories, they're going to not just say, don't go down by the water there, or the riptides and all that. It's easier to say there's something bad in that water. And if you go near it, it's going to drag you in and you're going to die. And like most of the stuff that we do, just talking about Donald Pleasance, sir, you might want to tell people, I hate to say this because I try not to believe it, but there might be some people out there that don't know who Donald Pleasance was.
Oh, goodness, yeah. I shudder to think that those people would walk amongst us, would they?
They might do, so I suppose you better give them a...
Okay, well, the English actor, most famous role, Dr. Loomis in the Halloween franchise.
He's done a lot, but in the original John Carpenter Halloween, he was the Doctor. So if you haven't seen the original John Carpenter Halloween, just turn off your podcast right now.
He was a Bond baddie, wasn't he?
Oh, he was. He was a Bond baddie, but I can't remember which Bond it was. Was it a Roger Moore? He was up, stroked the cat and all the rest of it.
The Austin Powers kind of rip-off, isn't it?
Yeah.
His voice delivering those lines was very, very effective on children, And again, Chris, as well as warning people to stay away from the water, it's also a warning to women or Irish maidens of the time to be wary of strangers and strange men and stranger danger. And I think a lot of the werewolf myths that had their origins exactly what you just said. It was an easy way for people in Europe to warn their children about the risks of murder and being abducted.
Yes, don't go off into the forests because the werewolf will get you, or
the werewolf will get you. Yeah.
And I know Europe had a massive belief in vampires, and we were having a chat today, Spence, about some of the stuff we might do in the coming episodes about some of the original Irish vampire stories. I'm looking forward to doing some of them.
Some great stuff to come.
But the Kelpie is most definitely one of the most interesting, and the fact that it's not just Ireland, it's Scotland, and we sort of have to say that out loud because our Scottish listeners might not be too happy if we just claimed it fully. But I like to think of it as a Celtic legend that pulls us together in that brotherhood. But it also tells us, don't trust a soaking wet woman by a lake.
Or a man with hooves for feet.
Yeah, I mean, it might be a giveaway, but hey, could be Halloween.
Well, I don't know about you, but as much as I'm enjoying this, I'm very, very tempted to go have a look at the night skies after what you told me at the start of this.
Well, it's if they were going to invade, I don't think it would matter. I think people are just like, yeah, go away. I think, people are like, yes, I'm here. And then they're like,
yeah, next.
So that's the Kelpie. There's not much more to say about it. If you do happen to come across a soaking wet horse, you've been warned. I think that's it, Spence. What do you think?
I think so. Our trusty producer Rebecca will put stuff in the show notes for you, folks, somewhere, information, some great imagery. And as ever, thanks for listening.
Next week is a special. Next week, you will be hearing our Christmas episode. And we have got a humdinger for you. So, see you then.
Bye, folks.
Looks like your story has found you. I wish it were another. But what's meant for you won't go by you. I'm sorry. No. No need to look so scared, eh? Enjoy the fire. Have a sup. Sure. Isn't it all just Irish Gothic? All just Irish Gothic.
You can find us at Irish Gothic Pod on Instagram or X. Or if you want to support us, please buy us a coffee.
And look, while you're there, give us a follow to keep up with all things in the Irish Gothic podcast. Send us any Irish myths, legends, stories that you'd like us to delve into next.
The Irish Gothic podcast was brought to you by Causeway Pictures. It's hosted by Chris Patterson and Spence Wright and was produced by Rebecca Alcorn. All rights reserved. Check out our other podcast, Hostage to the Devil, which delves into the dark world of possession and exorcism. You can get it wherever you get your podcasts.